The Morning Brew podcast with Jaffe and Razor, sponsored by Berkshire Bank Home Lending. Where you borrow matters. Well, I don't know if I'm more excited for the Stanley Cup playoffs to begin on Monday as we welcome you into Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor, Special Brew Playoff Edition, first round, Bruins and Carolina, presented by the great folks at Berkshire Bank and a host of others. We'll get to those in a moment. Or if I am legitimately more excited about the fact that I cut the lawn for the first time today, painted half of the porch.
Wow.
Put together a jigsaw puzzle of shooting pads and in the driveway, and then started cleaning up the patio in the back and making it usable. It was a good freaking day this Sunday, gorgeous Sunday in Boston, Razor. I know you worked earlier this morning, but were you able to do anything else or all daddy duty?
I was in Rhode Island for soccer this morning. I just made record time back from Taunton just now to get on TV here. But my grass I've got a date with my lawn on Tuesday. I was just looking at it, and tomorrow's going to rain. Tuesday it is. So it was a good day though, sitting out in the sun all day. It was nice.
Beautiful day. Yeah. And just a FYI for those wondering, my front yard, gorgeous, dogwoods blooming perfectly. The backyard looks like shit.
Dogwood. Eat holes.
Super Cooper has made it a minefield basically in the backyard. He's dug up two more, but two of the original, but he has left me with the rest. So for now, let's wait and see. All right, let's get to it. Bruins taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. What should be, at least in my opinion, a fantastic series. I do think that these two teams are more even perhaps than the standings will indicate. Separated by what? I don't remember. I don't even have it in front of me. He had 115 points for Carolina or whatever. And Bruins got dominated regular season. We know that. We've already discussed the other night, too. We kind of throw that out. Completely different lineup for the Boston Bruins. But I guess where we start with this is what concerns you most, what concerns us most about the Carolina Hurricanes?
Their defense core as a group, how hard they are to play against, how long they are, how well they just snuff teams out. There's a reason why they gave up the fewest goals in the league. I don't think it was necessarily just goaltending. It wasn't an Igor Shesterkin type season there. It was these guys don't give an inch out on the ice. They work hard all over the ice and they pressure all over the ice. So it's that pressure component, certainly on the defensive end, but also in the offensive zone that gives me pause first and foremost.
Those D that you're talking about, Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesce, Tony DeAngelo, Brady Shea, Ian Cole, and Ethan Bear. Those should be your six defensemen dressing, I would assume, to begin for Rod Brindamore's squad. It's hard to argue that Jacob Slavin is one of the best. He's not just stay at home, but solid defenders in the game. And I don't solid like pretty good. I mean, really good defenders. I think Brett Pesce is underappreciated, underrated. Another guy, 6'3", plays long. Shea, I think he's good. I don't know if he's great, but I think he complements Brett Pesce.
Yeah.
Big left shot defenseman. The guy that has stepped up a lot for them this year is Tony DeAngelo. He came in on a 1-year contract, Razor, and he came in and he performed a bit of a lightning rod in some people's eyes off the ice. And that's what led to his demise, obviously, with the New York Rangers. But DeAngelo comes in and puts up 51 points. That's not bad. Now, we're celebrating Charlie McAvoy scoring more than that. But DeAngelo, my point is, they lost Dougie Hamilton to free agency. He fit in really, really well. I think your point about how long they are is what also strikes me, because if the Bruins, and by the way, if you want to get all analytical, and I know you and I like to dive a little bit here and there into it, the Bruins actually did very well with slot shots this year. However, they were putrid against the Carolina Hurricanes this season. That was the difference. They couldn't get to the interior against this team.
That's right. And we've talked a lot all season. The blueprint of the last 3 or 4 finalists for the Stanley Cup Finals are 6'3", 6'4", 200-pound defensemen that can skate. And that's what this group is. And Tony DeAngelo complements him perfectly because he isn't the biggest guy, but he's the one who produces the offense. And he's able to get pucks through like any good as anyone in the league, realistically, walks the line really well. So it's that length, that inability to get to the inside, to get good opportunities, to, quite frankly, frustrate this Bruins forward group that we have seen happen before. And they start making the trying to make perfect seam passes. They try and get a little cute, and this group will not allow that to happen.
No. Bruins allowed Carolina 3.9 more slot shots per game on the other end of the ice, too. So not only did they not get to the front of the net against Carolina, they allowed Carolina to get to the front of the net. 3.9 more, 0.9 more than they did on average this season. So again, not to get too analytical, technical here, but thanks to our friends at Sports Logic for that and NHL Network. But that was the big difference in the series, besides the fact that the Bruins also hadn't changed their lineup around. Besides the fact that they didn't have Elias Lindholm, Hampus Lindholm in their lineup. Sorry.
And Tuukka Rask played, don't forget, one of those games.
And Tuukka played a game, right, where he was really coming off playing well. And
he gave up 5.
Yeah, in the first. And I know you and I talked, and I caught you, by the way, on the radio a little bit this morning. First time catching it. Good job, buddy. Talking about how that game, first game of the season against Carolina early on in the season, off of a back-to-back. That's not an excuse. 2 goals going off skates of Bruins defenders. All right, well, good for Carolina bringing the puck there, but you wouldn't call it a shellacking. The second and third game, they were different team. With that said, how hard is it for a player? I mean, we can hear everybody say the same thing, Razor. Regular season doesn't matter. All the Bruins are going to have to answer tomorrow to the small gaggle of Carolina reporters. But what does the regular season series mean to you being outscored 16-1? How legitimate is it that a player can say that doesn't matter when the series was that lopsided?
I'm with this group 1,000%. It doesn't. It won't bother this group. It won't be phased. They will have all the reasons why. And it was only 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
And it
was a while ago. Yeah,
and the other ones were so long ago. The last one, Marchand, Bergeron out of the lineup, Frederick, the whole thing. So no, I when they say it doesn't matter, I completely believe them. And I would say the other way. You could go through some of these other series. I'm sure there's some 3-0 records going into these playoffs. I think especially this season that none of these regular season metrics matter. And just like the Carolina Hurricanes are going to sit there and say the last 2 times getting beat by the Bruins doesn't matter to us either. They can legitimately say that because they have a new group. They have new goaltenders.
Right.
They have a new everything. And I don't think they're going to lean on that either. Yeah.
Coming up, by the way, we're going to talk with Shane Willis, part of Canes Television, who's going to go over the Carolina Hurricanes a little bit more, but and get an in-depth perspective on them from the Canes side. And I agree. I guarantee he's going to bring up how different this team is than 19 and 20, because this is not 3 or 4 players. I think we're talking 7, 8, 9 different players on this Canes team, and players that have learned how to play in the playoffs, which I think there is a tremendous that's a metric that I guess you can't see analytically, but you can. That's an eye test type of thing. Sitting in the room, being on the bench for those type of games. So, all right, we're heading into this series, and if this Bruins team we think is as healthy as they've been in a while. Lindholm looks good. Pastrnak looks good. As far as we know, everybody is right. How about the fact that this team now? I mean, do you think that this team is prepared depth-wise as you look at them from top to bottom forwards? Let's start with the forwards group, that they can handle this Carolina Hurricane, which is a pretty deep team as well up front.
They are deep, and But I think the answer is still yes. And only because I'm not sure if it's 14, 15 people deep, and we've talked about this on the show. I do like having bleed, and I think the addition of Wagner is very interesting. I think that's matchup driven. The more you think about it, the more he's going to have to get, if he gets in, he's going to have to look for 11 hits, and they're going to have to wear this group down. They're going to have to go at the Slavins of the world, the Pesci's of the world, and really try and wear them down.
They're going to have to play the game, to your point, in the corners.
Yeah.
Like they did in 19, especially in 19 and somewhat in 20. They're going to have to play the game in the corners, not even along the wall from half wall up. It's got to be towards the corners from half wall down or behind the net. We saw the Bruins do that against a couple of good teams in the last few games of the season. The Rangers forcing them to turn play below there. Carolina is no different. In fact, it's more important because of the length and the size that you talked about just a few minutes ago. So I digress. Continue, but you're right. They're going to have to play in those areas in this series.
Yeah, so I think those guys are perfect. Bleed and Wagner are perfect for this series in that depth role, in those where they fill in at times. I'm sure we're going to see one or two of them at some point. So up front, I don't mind the depth, and I think overall the forward scoring is better for the Bruins than it is for Carolina overall, top to bottom, especially with the addition of the second line and basing it on prior experience of Coyle and Smith in the playoffs and their ability to create matchups as well. So I like the Bruins forward depth.
We said it the other night. I'll say it again. I think you said it as I know you said is what the Coyle line I think is, and it's always the third line is always significant. I mean, look, we got to figure what are we going to get from Erik Haula, right? Amazing second half of the season, Taylor Hall type of thing. I still think the third line, especially in this series, because the Canes have a third line of Stahl, Niederreiter, and Jesper and Fast that are very good and almost in some ways pretty similar to the Bruins' third line. Although you could argue that Niederreiter with more experience is a more mature option than like a Trent Frederick. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But you need to have that Coyle line. If you don't have it, it's going to be I don't think the Bruins win this series. They need that physical size of that line to grind it out. But bringing up some numbers just from the Carolina Hurricanes, Aho led the way for them with 81 points, Razor. Svechnikov with a really nice year, 69 points. Teravainen had a beautiful season. He's a hell of a passer. That's something to keep an eye on, folks. 65 points with 43 assists. Trocheck, 51 points. So he's, in 81 games. So he's your second line center is Vinny Trocheck. One of their top scoring defensemen after D'Angelo is Jacob Slavin. He put up 42 points, 4 goals in that time. An interesting player for them. I'm curious to see how he does. Seth Jarvis, youngster. I'm looking forward to asking Shane Willis about him because, a youngster that plays a significant role for him. Right now, it looks like he's slated to play on the right side again with Aho and Svechnikov. And so, while he's had a heck of a good year, how does he perform come playoff time?
That's right, and those guys are all nice players. I think they were better in the first half than they were in the second when it was free flowing and rosters were being moved around. There's a lot of talk of that group, not as much as of late. They leveled off, and I don't see any of them being the David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand breakout kind of guys. The Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, which is why I was trying, I'm happy they're not playing the Leafs. I just think that the way they play without those game breaker type players, and that's not to say they're good NHL hockey players that are, getting 80, 90 points a season. It just feels a little bit different to me and something that the Bruins can handle, I think, both with their forwards and with their defense.
Yeah, Aho and Svechnikov, I think at home could be pretty, especially if they get a matchup away from Charlie and McAvoy and Lindholm. And that's where we're going to keep an eye out, right, of pairs being split. That second D pair, Grzelcyk and Carlo, will play an enormous role in this series. I know we both want to see Charlie and Hampus play 25 to 30 minutes a night. We know 25 is going to get there 30 minutes. However, I still think you need 18 to 20 minutes out of Grzelcyk and Carlo. I do, and you need to rely on them, not hope for it. You got to rely on that.
You do. I guess, It's going to be on the coaches to get them in right positions and the right matchups on the ice at the right times. And I got to imagine we're going to see a lot of McAvoy, Grizzlick, Lindholm, Carlo, those kinds of things we haven't seen very much of, but we're going to see more of that come playoff time, at least off faceoffs, and then they'll have that quick change play once they get out of the zone. I got to imagine that.
Got to imagine, yeah, especially on the road. That's my guess. Yeah, you don't want to chase it, right?
No,
but that's an easier matchup to maneuver, manipulate the D crews than the forward lines to do that. So the goaltending matchup, very interesting. Obviously, we know now after Sunday afternoon's practice at Warrior, before the Bruins took off for Raleigh. Nice short flight, by the way. Raleigh, especially in a charter, it's like an hour. It's really easy. It's simple travel, a little bit warmer down there. The guys will enjoy a couple of days there. But Linus Ullmark, which we already knew, we surmised with getting the start. It's evident that Freddie Anderson is not going to play in game one. Don't know if he can play in game two. Took a twirl around the ice. That's how they termed it on Sunday. Can't even worry about game two right now. Antti Raanta looks to be the starter. I don't know if they named him the starter. Again, we can ask Shane that, but it looks to be that Antti Raanta has never started a playoff game. He's appeared in 5 of them, a couple with the Rangers and with Arizona. Does this shift the goaltending matchup in favor of the Bruins, or does it make it, I guess you would call it an even one? Because I'll tell you, Antti Raanta to me is a pretty good backup, but he's not Freddie Anderson, I don't think.
So I guess if you asked me, and it was possible in the summer, and we might have even talked about in the summer, Ullmark or Raanta, I'm taking Ullmark all day, every day, and I would do the same now. Now, is that gap so wide because of playoff experience or not? No. So that keeps the goaltending matchup certainly in the national view very close, because again, we're talking about no playoff starts for any of the 4 goalies who are dressing probably for this entire series. Let's be honest. Freddie Anderson's not skating with the team now. He's not playing this week. That's for sure. 1,000% he's not playing this week.
You don't think so, huh? You think they're just not BS and they're playoff talking right now?
Yeah, it's playoff talk. If he's not gearing up and he's already missed 2 weeks, you can't throw him into game 2, right? He's got a lot of work to do to get his game where he needs to. So I don't expect him.
I don't expect him game 1 or game 2. I wouldn't surprise me if game 3, especially if he got a skate in Tuesday, Wednesday. You know what I mean?
Well, and if it is, even better. I'm happy with the Bruins going at a guy who hasn't played in 2 weeks coming off an injury, right? Like I would be okay. So that all of those things, it's definitely not a massive strength for the Bruins, only because we haven't seen Ullmark and Swayman, and I think they're both really good goaltenders, but I can't be unbiased and say that they're the best, and it's a landslide. That wouldn't be fair.
And we don't know if Pyotr Kochekov, again, Shane will give us Kochekov, will give us the correct pronunciation. Kochekov, I think, is actually it. But here's a kid, 22, had played in Russia the last couple of years. Actually played part of the year this year there. So he's played over 40, close to 50 games, I think, or 40 games this year.
He's good.
And he's got, he's got a ton of confidence, a ton of swagger to his game. Could he be the difference for them? Now, complete unknown. He handles the puck well, I'm told. He's aggressive, yet in the right way, not over aggressive. And he's like a Swayman size, 6'2", not gigantic, but nice size. And like Jeremy, I'm told, has that quiet smile on his face. Life is good, so to speak, and he brings it. As I said, I touched base with the Chicago Wolves people who had him there for part of the season. When I say very disappointed, they're not mad; they're thrilled for Pyotr, but they would love to keep him there for the playoffs because they would like to have a successful playoff run there. But it looks like he's going to be. We know he's going to be starting at least with the Carolina Hurricanes. So, I mean, I look at Linus Ullmark. And I know that the last month was more, I guess, intense for the most part. Obviously, playoff race, they knew they were in, etc. But the calmness to his game is the thing that stands out to me most. That he quieted his game down. I'm going to call it about 5 or 10 degrees from where he started the first half of the season. Again, my uneducated eye saw a big guy who couldn't find the puck very well, an awful lot early on in the season. and found himself in some funky spots at times, bobbling pucks, rebound control. Now the smoothness to his game, to me, is the most noticeable difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's comfortable now, and I think it's also a part of the Bruins D has gotten better as the season's gone on, and he's figured out where the shots are coming from more. He came from a place of chaos. He came from it's hard to again quantify, and analytics can do all those slot shots, everything else, but until you really get a sense of how this team plays in front of you and changing over, I think it did take him a little bit of time. I'm not sure he was completely comfortable with the way everything was done and what the expectation was, and I think he settled into that, and it's certainly shown in his game. I mean, this isn't just the last 2 weeks he played great, so now he's getting the start. It's been 2 months. It's a full body canvas that we've seen from him now, and and you have to like his talent and his ability more than what the Carolina Hurricanes have.
Yeah. Yeah, his presence seems to be a term, I guess, that again, because we don't know about Kochekov. We don't know about if he is going to start and his presence, but the presence of Linus Ullmark to me seems to be the one. And let's face facts, Antti Raanta has had a very hard time when he gets to become the guy in the last couple of years to remain healthy for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and he's a guy who kind of gets those stress injuries. The book on Raanta is the heat turns up and his groin doesn't feel great, or the heat turns up and his hamstring, he doesn't feel perfect and he doesn't feel comfortable, and he feels like he can't play. That's happened before. It happened in New York when he had an opportunity. It happened in Arizona. It's happened this season, just at the end of the year. Right away, Anderson comes out. He goes
cramping
he gets
up.
A cramp, right?
Yeah.
So there's a book on that, and that'll be interesting to see how that plays out over game 1 and game 2.
How confident are we in Jake DeBrusk and Erik Haula? Two guys that, I mean, we talked about it at length this year. We've documented both their stories, I guess, this season. One of them more controversial, I guess, than the other in the sense of Jake DeBrusk. But now they are both at a place where it seems like, to me at least, like I have major expectations for them. How confident are we, though, that they're going to get there? I'll start. Jake, to me, I think playing with Patrice and Brad and learning from them has put him into a spot where now he's expecting to score. Like he's expecting to. Before, it felt like he was hoping to every once in a while. And we'd see that good game, and then we'd see a couple of bad games. And now, because of his play away from the puck, I think that he's expecting to score. And to me, I feel pretty good about his game. I do, especially playing with those guys. Haula, it's not that I don't feel good. I feel really good about Haula's game and his confidence. I mean, this series, I think, actually measures up pretty good for him. Now, they may end up seeing Razor. That second line may end up seeing an awful lot of Aho's line. They might. I mean, I don't know if that'll be the matchup that Rod Brindamore wants, but, I mean, unless Aho's going to try and get him out there against, I guess, the no-sec line, if he can on the road. But, otherwise, I think he puts him out there with Pastrnak and Hall an awful lot, and that could be a challenge for him. But, I mean, Erik Haula has shown me something that I wasn't sure, despite the 1 year, 55 points with the Vegas Golden Knights that he had. He's got it in his bag. He showed it for a long time now.
Yeah, he's bought into the Bruins center mentality of 200-foot game, and he plays it almost more than the other guys have to, because he has to get to the front of the net for Hall and Pastrnak. He has to be that down low guy in the offensive zone and the defensive zone, whereas usually Patrice is the one in the bumper, up high, cleaning up that way. So no, I believe the expectations are very high for me, and I don't think that should change. Just because the calendar turns and playoffs come on. I think they've proven, at least, especially Hall, his consistency, his ability to play well even without scoring, his want, his desire, his compete, and all those things. I don't see how that gets turned off. There's always going to be like the size thing, the muscle thing, but I think he's smart enough, and that line is fast enough. They play with enough pace that shouldn't be. If they're relying on that, they're going to be in trouble anyways.
Right. This series, it will be a hard series if the Bruins don't manage pucks well, put them into right places. I don't think it'll be a hard series getting run over. I
Yeah.
don't think. I could be
This
wrong.
isn't,
I
I
mean,
don't think, I agree 1,000%. I think that's why it's a decent match. It's not the New York Islanders. This
yeah.
isn't the New York Islanders. It's not going to be that kind of a series at all.
Yeah, and they're fast though, and that's something
Yeah.
that they got to be prepared for. That's going to be something that's going to be huge. All right, listen, we're going to quickly talk about our sponsors here, and then we're going to bring in Shane Willis, and we're going to talk for about 15, 20 minutes about Carolina, get an in-depth perspective from Shane. Before we go there, we always want to thank the people that help make Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor possible. We already mentioned Berkshire Bank. The wonderful people there are presenting sponsor. Thank you to them. Where you bank matters. How about Fazenda Coffee Roasters in Dedham, and the ones that bring you Morning Brew mugs. They are the ones and the mugs are flying, baby. They are flying.
Playoff time. Get your mugs.
Get your mugs. FazendaCoffee.com/morning brew. Go there, order $45 or more, and you will get a free mug as well if you want one. Also, Bay State Brewery, 112 Harding Street in Worcester, located a couple of blocks from the Woo Sox new ballpark and also attached to a twin sheet rink there. Brewing distinctive handcrafted beer since 2012. Go check them out in Worcester, 112 Harding Street. Again, Bay State Brewery. They've got awesome food. They've got even better beer, and you want to go try it out. Max Pro Hockey, summertime, growth time. Razor, we're seeing it with all the kids, right? Get out there, practice your hockey, but do it with fun and do it with something that is unique. Max Gracia brings it all the time. Individual training. He's got full summer camps. He also has small group sessions, and in season, he also brings team development. So go check out maxprohockey.com. And lastly, a special welcome. They're going to start with game one, but I wanted to welcome Tresca, the restaurant right on Hanover Street. You may have heard of it before, folks. Tresca's coming on board, starting in the playoffs in round one. Go check out them on Hanover Street in the North End. As for Chef Rich, you never know when you might see a certain number 77 there too.
Yeah,
Raymond
Bork.
Bork.
He's back in town. He's back. So
he's back. Go check out Tresca. They have got amazing food, a ton of fun, great atmosphere. It is the perfect place to go to early before your Boston Bruins take the ice at TD Garden. So welcome to Tresca, to Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor. All right, coming up in a moment, Razor now will be joined by Shane Willis from Carolina Hurricanes Television. And with that, we do welcome in Shane Willis. Shane is with the Carolina Hurricanes, part of their TV crew. He played for the Carolina Hurricanes during his NHL career. It's been a while now, Shane, that you've been part of the TV coverage of it. We're thrilled to have you on here. And if you happen to be watching us on the YouTube end of things for Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor, it's not that we didn't want Shane on, because he would definitely increase ratings and views.
Certainly.
For Razor and myself. But because neither of us, or none of us, the three of us, are technical geniuses, and yet everything we said was followed perfectly by Shane, we can get the camera up. So just pretend it's a book on tape if you're watching us, or the big S stands for Shane, or Superman if you're a Canes fan. Shane, welcome to Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. I just figured everyone would pull out one of my old hockey cards, and I'm sure everyone has, and they can just post it up and listen to my sultry voice over the web.
Yes, they will. They will enjoy that. Go to Hockey DB. There's a good picture of you. You had the hair going well there on Hockey DB.
Yeah, the flow was called upon, and the flow is really coming back. My son, who's 14 and around the local rinks, as I told you, I was there this morning. These kids are really
oh my God. Flow. The mullet, are the mullets back in Carolina? Their mullets are coming back in Boston area. It's ridiculous, and it's awesome at the same time.
Well, in the South, the mullets have never really left, Billy.
That's a good point. That is an excellent point. All right, let's get to your team, the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that has had an amazing season, right? Winning the division, with record points for the franchise, a lot of fun, a fun style of hockey, a great coach. With all that said, expectations can sometimes bring pressure on a team. Do you think the expectations for cup or bust for this team is a fair statement, and do you think it is accurate?
I think it's a fair statement with this team. I think there's a belief in that locker room, but I do agree with you that there's always that pressure. If we look at years past when this team in the last 3 years have made the playoffs and made some serious runs, obviously losing to the Bruins twice, losing to Tampa last year, they were in a different focus. They were kind of the underdog going into the playoffs every round, and it was a little bit more, as you say, not as much pressure on this team. They just went out and played the game and, upset the Caps 3 years ago and made a deep run there before losing to the Bruins in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I think their confidence is so high inside that locker room, and the belief, the culture is what amazes me and what Rod Brind'Amour has done here the most with this group, with the additions in this offseason to continue to get better every single night. And they're really never out of a game because of, as you said, the way they play that high energy style game.
Well, Shane, I'm going to go to the goaltending because that's the easy one for me. And you just talked about culture and identity. How much of this team's identity is based on Freddie Anderson, or can you put yourself in net and this team's going to play and feel like the same confident team that you just spoke of?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as put myself in net, but I mean, just these last few games, we saw the youngster Pyotr Kochetkov just go in there. Obviously, he made some key saves, and obviously this youngster's got a bright future, but the defensive structure in front of them, I think, is a huge part of it. You look at all 6 of the Hurricanes defensemen, a very deep defensive core to help in that area. We know going into Monday that Freddie Anderson is not going to be available. Still working on coming off that injury that he sustained in Colorado. So I would assume, I haven't seen it yet until tomorrow morning when we see morning skate, but I would be on Antti Raanta to start that game. But again, both guys have been a huge part of this season, both Freddie Anderson and Antti Raanta. And I do believe the system they play, the D depth that they have, is a huge part of their success.
So what does that D depth do for this team, analyzing them, that makes them so good, makes them different, Shane?
I think it's the high pressure, in-your-face style defense they play. They don't sit back. They're not going to let you have time and space. That's their big thing. They're going to chase. They're going to try and take away time and space. Now, if you're snapping the puck around, you have to be ready for that. We've all seen the game and how to beat pressure, but they seem to be in such good sync that when they're pressuring the puck so hard, they create turnovers. They're more physical this year than they were last year with the additions of Ian Cole, Brendan Smith, and Tony DeAngelo. So they have that edge to them. But the other part, they're so good with their sticks. It amazes me night in and night out. Jacob Slavin probably leads the way. It's like a fly swatter out there. He gets a piece of everything, it seems, when it comes around him. And they do a great job taking away those lanes. So they're a little bit of everything. They're mobile, which you have to have through and through. But they have a little bit of edge to them now as well.
And with the defense to the forwards, it sounds, when you describe the D, it kind of sounds like what I think of the Carolina forward group as well. Long, strong, good sticks, pressure all over the ice. Is that a fair assessment of them? And is that something that is just that's their culture, like you talked about, just like how Rod played and when they won in 05, 06?
Yeah, I think that up-tempo style, I mean, they're going to talk about the best way they're going to play defense is with their forecheck. And they're going to try and pin you in. The forwards are coming hard, hunting down the puck. But when it comes around the boards, it's a full green light for the defense. I mean, they're coming on a pinch. Their third forward is very responsible, being above the puck and high. And the amount of pressure they create is just turnover after turnover in the offensive zone. Then when you get back, I think you'll watch these players, and Rod he talked about the red line being called the hustle line. And if you watch his forwards, I mean, their heads are down, and it's a race to see really who can get there first and the pressure they have coming back up the ice. So their forecheck number one is how they create a good defensive structure, but then the way they come back and support is a key part to their defense, taking away that space, keeping those good gaps, and standing up in the opponent's face in the neutral zone.
Shane, how much stock do you think the team puts into the season series against the Bruins, where everybody knows the Bruins got dominated? You cannot deny it statistically or the eye test. With that said, they haven't played since mid-February. So how much stock do you and the team, you think, put into the season series?
Well, I think it has to give the Hurricanes confidence going in. And if you look at all those games, they had such great starts to those games against the Bruins. The last one especially I think it was 5-0 after the first period in Boston on Willie O'Ree night. The jump they've had in those games. But I think those past, not last year, but the 2 years before that, the losses that they took to the Bruins in the playoffs, that's a huge part of this culture here. They remember that. And, I always, growing up in Edmonton and watching the Oilers dynasty, and I watched it just the other day, the Boys on the Bus series about the Oilers and how they had to learn how to win. And I think the Hurricanes losing to the Bruins those 2 years and last year in Tampa has been huge building blocks to this team. Guys like Sebastian Aho, Nino Niederreiter, Andrei Svechnikov, in being able to play the right way to win in the playoffs. You both know, you see the difference in the playoff hockey. And I think this team now has learned that for 3 seasons. They're ready for it. They've had upgrades, not only on defense, but in goaltending, and they're ready to take that next step this year.
What forward line, two-part question, what forward line is most important to the Carolina Hurricanes' success? And how do you see them matching up against the Bruins' 4 lines? Do you see a matchup that's obvious from the Carolina perspective, or are we just going to have 2 teams that are rolling over the lines and really just trying to line up their D pairs?
Yeah, I think Rod and Tim Gleason focus a little bit more on the defensive pairs compared to the forward lines. It would be easy for me to say the Aho line because they need to score. But the line that has led the way for the Hurricanes, I would say almost the entire season, but definitely the last couple of months, has been Jordan Stahl's line with Nino Niederreiter and Jesper Fast. And when you talk about a forecheck and how these guys play big and heavy style hockey, that's what you need in the playoffs to wear teams down. And that line, Jordan obviously being the captain, and he's a vocal guy in the room and says what needs to be said. But he's just like Rod and leads by example. When he's going, the team is going. So I think you could see Rod try and match up him with the Bergeron line and out-muscle with Marchand, and then let Aho face, Pasta if they have them split up at the time or if they have them together. There's so many different matchups, but I think you'll try and see the Slavin D'Angelo and then Pesci Shea try and match up against that top line on the backside.
Mm-hmm. So, looking at the Bruins, I don't know how much, I know you know them. I don't know how much you've been able to deep dive into them just yet, but what concerns you the most about the Bruins if they are to be successful against the Carolina Hurricanes?
Well, I think we all know, and I would have to get my stats check on this one, that the Bruins have been the hottest, if not the hottest team here to finish, late in February through the end of the season. So to me, they're starting to clip along at the right time. And I think a part of the Bruins clipping along is now it's not only that top line. You have guys like Haula, Taylor Hall, all these guys chipping in more now than they were at the start of the season. So I think when you look at the Bruins, they're playing so well right now, and they now have the depth to not only rely on that number one line, right? They've always been that one line heavy, but I believe that the depth that they're showing now and how they're winning games is what the Hurricanes not only need to match up against, but control. And then we can always go back to the old faithful. You're going to go against one of the best power plays that the Bruins have against the best penalty kill in the National Hockey League. Who can win that battle will have an advantage in this series.
Well, and you just talked about the Bruins being hot. Is it? And there's a bit of a narrative that Carolina, not stumbled, but they didn't do much at the deadline, nothing sexy. Started out so amazing in the season that they weren't able to keep the pace at the end, which is completely understandable in an 82-game season. But their record's still quite good in the last 6 weeks. Was there a little bit of just complacency like most of the Eastern Conference had at certain times? or is there certain parts of the game that have changed since the start that they had, where they only had 7 losses in the first 40 games of the season?
I think in watching this year and how these games were put together, obviously the Olympics always throw in a major wrinkle. Games being rescheduled. Like, I think just how the schedule got compacted. Every team had the hit the wall phase of a week or 2 weeks where they're like, we need to rest. Can we not come to the rink today? And the end of the year, I think Rod was so keen to that they didn't really practice. I mean, they were playing every other day. They weren't at the rink. They were trying to get their rest at times. And I think they just went through what every team does in that lull. I don't think they took off the gas any. I think some guys got banged up a little bit, but they fully healthy besides, Anderson. As you mentioned, Max Domi was added. It takes time to learn this.
How's he been? How's he been for the team?
And he's been good. These last few games, I think he's been real good. I think the weekend they spent in New York, the game against the Islanders, we saw vintage Max Domi. He was under the skin of the Islanders. Chara was whacking him. Everyone was coming after him. Even when the game ended, I mean, the Islanders have nothing to play for. They're coming off the bench trying to get to Max Domi. So he had his game going, and I think it's starting to roll the right way. I think the other thing you see that Rod's done, he's started to find a few different combinations that he's liked a little bit more with his lines than we saw early on in the season. And he and Jeff Daniels have such a feel of the game. They'll flip-flop guys quickly if it's not going how they like it. So I think the combinations and what Domi adds to your depth is key to this team.
Andrei Svechnikov is a player who is a real power forward. He's a big man, right? He's a big man. He's getting even bigger and he's getting faster. He also, from my perspective, walks that line of sometimes maybe getting involved or a little over involved in certain things, but yet he's a special talent. Do you think that he knows where that line is, Shane? Or is it, what's your take on Svechnikov, where he's been? He had a nice year. He almost got the 70 points, if I remember correctly.
Yep,
69 points. Again, a power guy. A few years ago, wasn't it Ovechkin that gave him they got into a scrap? And then there's been a few other things that have found him, some questionable hits. What's your take on him, as he's still a very young player in the National Hockey League?
He really is at 22. And in talking with Rod and our strength and conditioning coach, Bill Berniston, he talks about the physical specimen that this kid is. Like, he likes being in the gym. He likes lifting. And for 22, he's far stronger than most guys on the team. And I agree, early in his career, it takes away from his game when he gets running around. But I thought this year he was able to dial back and, yes, play physical and heavy, but do it the right way. He didn't take as many penalties this year as he had in the past few years, but I think that is also from always moving his feet. Some of his penalties last year were more stick penalties and the reaching and, finishing your hit and everything's just coming up in the air, which they're going to call now. But I thought his heavy physical game was key this year, but I also think he was more in tune defensively at a plus 19 this year compared to years in past. He played a better game. He was more responsible in the defensive zone. And as we know, that's a huge part to any young man's game. And he's going to be a key part too if the Canes get their power play going. He has such a lethal shot, and he needs to get clipping along early. I think any young guy, when they get into the playoffs, if they can score early, game one, it sets them up for a better series compared to a veteran guy who can just continue to grind. I think Andrei wants to get off that quick start, but I expect him to be extremely physical in game one.
What's when the Carolina Hurricanes, when you find out it's the Boston Bruins, what is, and I know Billy kind of asked this, what scares you about them, but what can we watch for in game one? Because we're going to do all this deep dive here the next 24 hours. Game one, the puck's going to get dropped and it basically goes out the window, right, Shane? All of this goes out the window the first period. Something happens, adjustments get made. What can the Bruins exploit, knowing that Cassidy's not listening to this, the Carolina Hurricanes, and what is kind of that weakness that that you've seen? Is there any trends that the Carolina Hurricanes really have to be careful in their game?
I think, well, the one part of the power play I just talked about, when the power play hasn't been clipping for the Canes, it seems to have affected the rest of the game. And I think in the playoffs, that's something that can't take you off because the Canes are so good 5-on-5 that the power play can't derail how you're playing shift after shift. I think the lead is extremely important. Again, doing a deep dive, you saw if the Hurricanes were leading after one, their record is through the roof. Now, the other key part, as you talk about coming through the neutral zone, I think when the Hurricanes are aggressive and doing it right, it's so tight, there's not much room to get in. Now, if you break through, if the D aren't up and they're back and they're not getting that support, I think scoring off the rush or creating chances off the rush is where teams have gotten a little bit lately. Look at the last couple of games of the year. Again, the Canes aren't playing for anything, but you play the Devils, a young, high-flying team who wants to rip through the neutral zone, and if you give them room, they're going to sting you. And I think you could say that really about any team, but the Bruins have scoring power. They know how to work. And that's an area I would say that if you can keep it tight, you can create turnovers. The transition game that the Hurricanes have could be the pushback that they need. Now, the one cushion that I talked about this yesterday on the radio that have amazed me all year long is how the Hurricanes do play in the third period. It blows me away. They have the biggest goal differential in the National Hockey League in the third period. No matter what the score, they seem to be, it's their best period all the time. And it's something that is going to be key in the playoffs, no question, because you're not going to lead every game. And if you can come back in third periods and take over momentum, and especially here in this building, if you come out in the third period and get it going, I mean, this roof rattles. It just is a different level of noise that our fans bring into that building, and the guys ride off of that. And the third period is a huge part of why they've been successful as well.
Two-part question to follow up on that. How much is that third period success due to the conditioning of the team because of what Rod the Bod Brind'Amour, right, is about? And the second part of the question is, when's the last time you worked out with Rod Brind'Amour? And
well, that second part's going to be easy, but the first part, and Rod mentions this, and I think he's a guy, we've all met him, that he's so humble in what he does, and he gives so much credit to the people he surrounds himself with. So you look at a training staff here led by Bill Berniston, Doug Bennett on the medical side. Every time I'm in there, it amazes me, and the Canes aren't the only team using the technology to their advantage of getting their players ready. But I truly believe that is one of the biggest parts of this team because of what he does. He's still the first guy in the gym in the morning. I can tell you that, making sure he gets it done before the players get there. He could still do the testing without an issue. And I do think it's a big part. It's a part of the culture that we're going to skate, we're going to be ready, and no one's going to outskate us or outwork us. And you have to have that definitely when you go into the playoffs, because you get into those trenches on the boards and it's those 50-50 pucks. Who's going to come up with the 50-50s and make plays and get it out? And the Hurricanes conditioning does have a huge part of it that you give credit to their staff. And I have not been in the gym. I don't know if I ever went in the gym when I played with Rod. Like I would be walking by and be like, Rod's in here, I'll come back later. I can't.
Yeah, he'd still beat a lot of players right now with what he does. What a beauty.
There's going to be this series. There's going to be in all first rounds in the Eastern Conference. Certainly, they're going to go back and forth. Teams are going to lose. There aren't going to be any sweeps. What kind of a leash is your goaltending issue going to have? Can you imagine a scenario where they go back and forth? Can you imagine a scenario where you get a win and change a goaltender, or is it going to be you win, you stay in kind of scenario? Do you get any sense at all of what they're trying to do back there?
No, I think without Freddie Anderson, I think that makes it a little bit more difficult. But again, Antti Raanta's played good. But everyone asked me when the Canes clinched last week, winning in the Garden against the Rangers. It was the youngster. It was Kochetkov that had the win and played so well. And you're not going to say things are similar, but if Antti Raanta happened to have a bump in the road, in 2006, the Hurricanes had a bump in the road and went 0-2 the Canadiens and threw in a young guy named Cam Ward.
Mm-hmm.
And he led the way through. And I think this guy knows very little English. And he's smiling all the time. He loves being here. But when you know about the young players, and Razor, you know about being a goaltender, I don't think the magnitude of everything going on has even hit this kid yet. So if you could ride him, I mean, he's talented as ever. He's got size. He's got all the tools. But I think that's something, if you had to go to the youngster, I wouldn't be worried about it. If there was a bump by Raanta, I don't see him alternating. I would sure if Raanta gets the win in 1, he'll go in game 2 because you know how much a lead in a series is key. And then we'll kind of see, it'll be announced as soon as Freddie steps on the ice for a practice. It just hasn't happened yet. So I'm assuming he's a few days away from even thinking about a game for him.
Yeah.
My last question, and we really appreciate your time. Sebastian Aho, a player that he's not big, but he plays inside hockey. He's not the strongest, yet he wins a ton of battles. I don't know if the term slinky is fair, but he slides in and out. He's so heady, so cerebral out there, at least from my eyes. What has he grown with the most in his game as he led them in scoring again this year? And he's a guy that the Bruins have had an issue with before.
Yeah. Someone asked me that question about Sebastian too the other day, and I said, well, the one thing he's grown into is being an all-star in this league, going to the all-star game for the Hurricanes. But he is really, when you talk about complete players, has it all. And where I saw his game change was, I believe it was last year or the year before, all of a sudden the Canes took a penalty and over the boards came Sebastian Aho and Teuvo Teravainen to kill the penalties. And from that moment on, when you talk about complete, how he played defensively and the push that Rod put on him to say, you got to kill penalties, you have to play in every situation. I can't have you sitting on the bench. He has just thrived in every situation. You mentioned he plays heavy, he's small, but he's compact, he's fast. But the biggest thing we see in Sebastian Aho, what he does, this guy hates to lose. And it's daily. If he's having some little game in practice or he hates it. He can't stand losing, and that's something that drives him every day. And he knows what's happened the last 3 years. And this burns inside this leader to come out and play the way he does on a daily basis. And Rod mentions it all the time. These guys have to learn how to do it daily, and Sebastian has learned that, the compete and the work he puts in, and it's attributed to how much success he's been having this season.
Awesome. It's going to be fun.
It is. It's going to be. I can't wait for it. I mean, every time it's like Christmas Eve right now. The playoffs start tomorrow. The tailgaters are going to be out cooking everything and they can outside, and it was 85 here today, so it's playoff weather. We're ready to go.
Oh, so no. And so good. Carolina has always had one of the best press meals in the league with the barbecue. The multiple style dessert offering has always been nice there, including the soft serve. I'm assuming it's still being offered down there. I will miss that, but maybe I'll have to treat myself to some on my own over here, Shane. But yeah, the barbecue on the outside, the tailgating is a ton of fun there. It starts Monday night. Razor and I were talking the other day, 2 days ago, and we did a show about how what he would start to do. Like his wife knew, then girlfriend, not to talk to him, but to take care of everything else on the side to make sure, he started to change the personality right when playoffs began. Were you the same way when the playoffs came around?
Yeah, usually it was my wife kind of knew. It was obviously before we had kids, and it was my first year. I wasn't married in Carolina. It was more minor league stuff. About the week before playoffs started, she said, "Okay, I'll see you when you get home." And she would just head back to North Carolina because she's like, "You guys are nuts. You take it to a different level. You don't even talk to us when you come home." I'm sure all the wives who we owe everything to, do so much when we travel. And, I haven't been traveling with Bally's yet until I will travel now for the playoffs. to get some extra coverage in. But I told my wife, I said, "Are you ready for this?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "For me to go back on the road." She said, "Yeah, go ahead." Like,
yeah.
17 years, they're like, "You could go now. It's fine."
Yes, it's interesting now that they pack your bags for you, but it's not the day of. It's about 2 days before. You've been home too long. But we really appreciate your time, Shane, your insight. It's going to be fun. Monday night, 7 o'clock in Raleigh, Bruins and Canes. Game 1. Playoffs are back. Not that they weren't back last year, but it was different. We know it was different. They're back. They're back to being the best professional playoff there is.
And no tarps on the seats.
Yeah,
and no
exactly.
tarps anywhere. Right. No issues. Let's get it on. Let's drop the puck. So again, thank you, Shane, very much. And as always, we're going to thank our sponsors one more time, Berkshire Bank, for everything that they've done for us, Bay State Brewing, Fazenda Coffee, Max Pro Hockey. And yes, welcome to Tresca on Hanover Street in the North End. Go spend a little time there before the Bruins take on the Canes in Game 3. That'll be Friday. But until then, everybody, enjoy Face-Off Monday night. This was the Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor series preview. Razor and I joined by Shane Willis. So have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful coffee. Get ready for the playoffs.